What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my Forma building guide for this month's Holo Forms featuring Fate's units with duo female Corrin, Ninja Camilla, Valentine Leo, and Valentine Takumi. We're gonna be having skills up to the Legendary Sakura banner, so stuff like Haste Slice, Ed Scales, Active Lookout is in the pool. But unfortunately, AR Far Resound is not gonna be in the pool, which would have been lovely for Ninja Corrin and also Ninja Camilla. So let us begin with Ninja Corrin, and we have got a second duo unit in Holo Forms after duo Iden, and she is here with Ninjutsu Scrolls as her 9 Might player phase brave weapon. This does give you +4 speed, and then it has got the penalty of -4 defense and resistance, so it doesn't have slaying built in it, and the true damage that you get out of this is going to be max 7, so it's not going to be too much, and you would certainly need to stack up a lot of skills that can give you the true damage to really make a dent with Ninja Corrin against a lot of the threats, and even then, there is going to be an upper limit to the things that she can kill. And she is a Hero Rises winner, so a lot of people did plus and merge her, and they do use her in Arena. She was a pretty good scoring unit for that time, but now a lot of free-to-play units can score as much as her, and even just score higher than her. You have got access to Paned, Marnie, and stuff like that, and she can basically score same as Cyril from the free-to-play pool, so it's not the highest, but it can work out if you've got other high-scoring units in your core, and if you've got some merges on your bonus legendary unit. So it will definitely help you have a range unit on your team because you are going to be able to use the emblem Lin Ring, and having any kind of range unit in Arena is going to be making your life easy, but you will have to face a lot of far save Marnies that is pretty much going to be there for every single match if you're in the higher tiers or higher scoring. And outside of Arena, she is going to be needing a lot of support, and we do have support that can give her extra damage output, so that is going to be needed, and I'll be going over the good allies that you can run with her. And for her duo skill, she basically has Gale Force, which means that you would need to enter the combat so that you can get the extra action, and it's not an extra action that is just given to you like that, similar to Brave Felix or after not engaging in combat like Brave Crom, for example, who can just use an assist. So Corrin will have to go into a combat, survive it, and then she's going to be able to use her duo skill. And for surviving as such an offensive unit with low bulk, you pretty much have to kill your opponent first. And for that, as I said, stack up a lot of true damage. So when it comes to her special, you can go with Ruptured Sky or Frost Moon. Both of them are the high arena scoring specials, but keep in mind that you're not going to be getting the pre-impulse out of Frost Moon, and she does not have the resistance to scale off the damage output of Frost Moon. So even though you're going to be piercing the damage output fully, it's not really going to be doing that much damage, and that's why I kind of prefer and recommend Ruptured Sky if you don't already have it. If you do, then I guess you could grab Frost Moon. There isn't really much of an option for her, unfortunately, and if you do not have any of those specials, then Ruptured Sky is probably better to get because at least it is going to be doing some meaningful damage using the attack stat of the enemy, which is likely going to be higher than whatever resistance that Corrin is going to be having here, even at max investment. For her Slotty, Slice the Sparrow is, in my opinion, the best option because it gives you the 5 true damage per hit, and it also gives you the guaranteed follow-up attack, which can act as a pseudo half-null follow-up, so you're able to quad attack the slower foes if you survive, of course, with their counterattack. And Slice the Sparrow is pretty easy to trigger because we've got so many free-to-play units that can give out the status effects like it's candy, and even in your arena core, you're likely going to be having units like Marnie, Fallen Lloyd, stuff like that, who can give you the visible status effect. So that way you can easily get the true damage per hit, and that is extremely important because she only gets the 7 true damage out of her weapon, so this 5 is going to be added on top of it. And then you can also run Flared Sparrow if you get really unlucky. It's not really the best skill, but its main use case nowadays is going to be there to set up the flame terrain, so you can replace the terrain of the enemy, and then you can use that to run away with maybe a cigarette ring or any kind of Kanto effect that you may have with stuff like Fortress Echo. So that is something that can be helpful with the combination of Kanto. And Verge of Death is also the absolute last resort option if you get really unlucky. It doesn't give you any kind of true damage, but at least it cleanses the debuffs on attack and speed and also gets rid of the panic. And then for this slot B, I would say that Resonance is going to be your best bet because, as I said, the Resound Far Scale is not available and you're able to get 12 true damage per hit, and she doesn't really have that much trouble reaching 50 HP. 50 HP is going to be the benchmark to fully utilize Resonance to its full effect and get the max piercing and true damage out of it. And it's going to be the same with the Resound skill. And getting either of Resonance or Speed Resistance for Trace is going to be enabling you to easily inherit Speed Resistance for Resound whenever that comes out, if you ever want to give that to her, because the prerequisite fodder is going to be there on your Corrin, so you wouldn't really have to go through much of the trouble for, duplicating that kind of skill in the future. And if you get really unlucky, then you can give her Occultist Strike, because it at least gives you some true damage, even if it doesn't give you the piercing like Resonance. And Speed Resistance Fortrace could also be an option if you want to have the Canto natively on her, and if you're not going to be giving her the Canto support or give her Fortrace Echo or anything like that, or if you don't want to run Cigarette Ring, so that can be helpful. And then finally, if you do have the other options already on her, then Speed Defense Detect is actually going to be a pretty fun option for the other game modes other than Arena, so that can help you get the middle of the turn, exposure status, and debuff on the enemy, and it does give you the lull speed, and it's also a skill that she has got access to, being a ranged cavalier with already limited options. And then finally for slot C, I would recommend Fatal Smoke because it is needed nowadays to kill the miracle tanks like Marnie in Arena. I mean, even if you chip down Marnie, at least having Fatal Smoke is going to be helpful just to finish her off. So many times you can chip her down with your other units, and if you do not have Fatal Smoke, then her Miracle would be really annoying. And that's why I think that Fatal Smoke is still helpful to have, even if she cannot take down these Miracle units from full HP. And there's also the fact that there can be enemies that may get the Miracle support from their allies, so Fatal Smoke can help you in that regard. And if you want to have some kind of visible buff and a visible status on her, then you can try and get Attack Speed Insight Tone that is in the skill pool now from Valentine Claude, and that can be a good skill on a ranged cavalry unit like her. She can also give out the visible buffs to her allies, and that's why I've recommended Rally Defense Rest Plus as an assist here, because if you run that with this skill, then you can fully buff up an ally with it. And if you give her any kind of Canto effect like Cigarette Ring or Fortrace Echo or any kind of external Canto support, then Shadow Shift can also be helpful. And Outspeed Wave is going to be an option if you want to get the full null follow-up and if you want to buff her speed up. So it's an option, but I do think that the other skills are going to be taking the priority for me personally. For a unit like Corrin, who can get another action with her duo button and who essentially has Gale Force, refreshers are going to be really good for her, and Attuned Azura can be a cavalry dancer who can keep up with her movement, and there's also Spring Plumeria who can give you the extra damage output, the debuffs and everything. Even Desert Tethys is not bad because she gives you the Firestorm Dance, the Desperation effect basically, which is really helpful if you're able to quad attack with Corrin. And Elfin is also pretty helpful because he can debuff the enemies with the exposure status, and then he can also give you the Hexblade effect. So as a refresher, he's not bad. And there's also Spring Mirabilis, who can debuff the enemies in middle of the turn with the panic, and she can also run the Ploy skills and Firestorm Dance. So Ploy skills is something that can help on your refresher because it gives you the exposure status, which is straight up 10 true damage per hit, which is an amazing thing for a brave attacking unit like Ninja Corrin. And if you want to have more damage output support for nuking, then you could run Legendary Sakura, who gives that to you with her kit. And there's also Ninja Lucina, who can inflict the middle of the turn debuff with her detect skill. She also gives you the Future Witness status, so that can help you with the Canto. So if you're not going to be having any other source of Canto, then it can be one, and its extra stats can help you. Legendary Ira gives you the Potent status, so if you run her with any kind of Desperation unit, then Corrin can attack 5 times. Now you gotta stack up the true damage so that it's not 0 times 5, of course. And Nefni is also really helpful because she can give you the true damage on your special triggers, and she also gives you Null Guard, which can help you trigger your specials, as you don't really have access to Null Guard all that easily being a ranged cavalier. Thor also gives you the pre-impulse and also the special charges effect in the combat, and she can also help you, get past the trench tiles because of her Omni Guidance. Emblem Lin and Emblem Erica are one of the best units in the metagame right now, especially Emblem Erica, so she can give you the special charges status, which like I said does help, and if the enemy does not have any kind of guard effect, then you're going to be triggering Ruptured Sky on your Brave attack, and Emblem Lin can provide you with the Desperation status. We also have Duo Hathran who can give you the charge status, and she also gives you the special cooldown after using your assist if you have Divine Nectar, so that can be helpful to bring down the cooldown. And you're also able to get an extra action with Divine Nectar, so that kind of action economy is going to be useful. Ymir can give you the Miracle support, so Corrin is extremely frail, and if the enemy does not have any kind of brave hit, and if they are just banking on their single attack to kill her, then Ymir can be helpful. And then finally, we've got Odor Master 1 who can give you the Insighted status and the Unhindered Movement status, so that's going to be helping you get past the trenches even if you're facing any kind of warp blocking, and both of those visible status effects are going to be activating her Slice Sparrow. Ninja Camilla is a red mage flyer, and she has got a simple weapon, but she can be effective because she has got the dual phase brave effect, which is one of the best aging effects in the game. And unlike Corrin, she does have a slaying weapon, so she can have an easier time triggering the specials on her brave attack. And this weapon does give her the visible defense and resistance, and gives her the penalty of -8 speed, which doesn't matter much because she's already so slow. So the extra visible resistance can help you because you're able to use that productively with many of the skills that check for the resistance, and she already has resistance preempt built in her weapon, which is pretty unique because it gives her the advantage at any kind of HP if she has got more resistance than the foe. But the overall bulk of units has gone up tremendously ever since then, with a lot of flat damage reduction and things that we've got, so it's gonna be a bit harder for her to kill things through her vantage range, but she can still do it against many of the nukes. And basically with her, you would try to stack up her attack and resistance because those are her two main stats, and there are quite a lot of options now which range flyers like her can have, so this does come at a good time. But unfortunately, as I said, the Resound skill is again not going to be there. So for her build, I would recommend this. Frost Moon is going to be a must because it does scale off her very high resistance, so its damage output is going to be akin to Glacies, but a bit lower, and it also gives you the full piercing. Now, Camilla is not going to be getting the pre-impulse at her Frost Moon because she's got the Brave weapon, but still it doesn't matter because the Frost Moon's damage output and full piercing is still quite valuable, and you just cannot give up on that. So it is going to be the optimal special a lot of the times, and it is something you should be grabbing from this HoF Forms. And then for this Lottie, I would recommend Crystalline Water because, as I said, you would have to stack up her attack and resistance, and those are her main stats. And it protects you from the debuffs on those stats and also from panic. And the extra visible resistance is going to be coming in handy with the Discord and Ploy checks. And it's also a dual phase skill, so it's going to be there when you nuke something in the player phase, and it's also going to be there when you are trying to vantage something. And Slime Mirror is going to be the pure player phase option if you want to get the extra true damage, but as I said, it is going to be purely for the player phase. And so is going to be Flared Mirror, because if you already have Crystalline Water, then you could grab these options, as it could be good tech options for many of the maps where you can set up the Flame Tile. Fire Flood Boost can give you the extra HP, so I mean it can help you if you're trying to run Resonance or the Far Resound skill in the future. And for her slot B, I think that Attack Resistance Discord is a much better option than Resonance because on lower investment, she's not going to be having enough HP to hit 50 HP to get the full use out of it. And you get around like 10 true damage per hit with the skill, which is not bad. And it also gives you a lot of in-combat debuff on the enemy. And it also gives you the Discord debuff so it can be helpful with her Brave weapon, and it can also go well with any kind of other slotsy skill that you want to run on her outside of deploy skill. So the flexibility it offers, I do like it quite a lot, and it's not bad for the combat itself. And resonance is also an option if you want the piercing on every single hit, which is going to be helpful. And if you are trying to give her attack resistance for resound in the future, then getting either of the resonance or Fortress 4 is going to be helpful for that, because it can help you with the prerequisite basically. So that would be something I would suggest if that's your end goal. If not, then the Discord skill is going to be giving you the true damage, and you can try and outsource the piercing to your allies with the damage reduction piercing status, but she does have the full piercing at a Frost Moon, so that's why I do like the Discord skill, which can make use of her visible resistance. And then finally in the slotsy, I also like Ploy because it can double down on the visible res usage, and it can give you the full mileage out of your stacking up of resistance with crystalline water and stuff. So the exposure status is really helpful for any kind of Brave weapon unit, because as I said in Corrin section, it is straight up 10 true damage per hit, because Camilla is going to be depending on that to vantage her enemies. And you can also try and run attack resistance trucks if you want to get the guaranteed follow-up attack with her. It can help you quad attack, and it can also help you support your allies in a different way. So it's also an option if you already have a ploy skill on her, or if you have another ally who can debuff the enemy with the exposure. Fatal Smoke, as always, is going to be a good option, and even better on a red unit like her, because she does have the weapon strangle advantage against Marnie, so she can hit relatively hard if you stack up support, and Fatal Smoke is going to be ignoring the Miracle, which is really helpful even in something like Arena Assault. And Guidance can also be good because many times you're going to be running a Near Savior with her, so that she can vantage the ranged enemies, while the Near Savior can protect your team against the high mobility melee threats like Emblem Erica and Emblem Sigurd. So Guidance and its warping to your armor allies is useful. Soaring Echo could be an attune skill that you could run on her, and if that's the case, then you could get the other slotsy skills. And if you are going to be running Fortress Echo on her, then do not get the Crux skill, because it is going to be coming along with Attune Micaiah. Having a Brave weapon is going to be helpful when it comes to the Vantage playstyle, but she doesn't really get any kind of true damage out of her weapon, not even like 7 true damage like Corrin. So that's why any kind of help that can be there to increase her damage output with Spring Plumeria, or even with the special triggering like with Thor, is going to be helpful. You also get Null Guard and the Stone Terrain out of Lumera, so that kind of 3-row and 3-column support is nice. And then Attune Micaiah can give you the cleansing in the enemy phase, and Ymir can also give you the Miracle to fall back upon, especially if the enemy targets her resistance, which is going to be pretty high. And unfortunately, because we do not have any kind of good close counter option, we do not even have the Sacred Seal for it. That's why I think that running Crystalline Water is better to focus on her resistance, and then you could simply run her with a Near Savior that can support you a bit. So Rhea can give you the Miracle and the flat damage reduction. Nidhogger also gives you the damage reduction piercing status on every single hit. Even Mythic Nidhogger is nice because of her Sabotage debuff. Young Elise and Young Leo from the recent Nor banner not only make for a good theme, but they actually are meaningful for her combat, because Elise can give you the Special Charges status and the Treachery status, which can boost up her damage output. Of course, it is not going to be as useful as something like Spring Plumeria, but still. And then we have got Leo with the middle of the turn debuff with his Detect skill, the Extraction, and also the Sabotage debuff, which does double down on all of the debuffs that Camilla does want to get. And then Legendary Sakura is going to be there with the Ice Tile, so she can block the melee initiation so that Camilla can just be there to take care of the ranged enemies. And then Ninja Lucina is always going to be helpful with her Future Witness and also her middle of the turn debuff, just like Leo. And if you try and have Camilla as your lowest defense unit, then technically you can use her as an anti-Larathar unit by forcing her to have lower defense, and then she's going to be getting hit by the force assigned decoy, and she's going to be becoming a Far Savior who does have the Vantage and the Brave hits, so that can be a bit problematic for some of the nukes. Valentine Leo comes at a bit of an unfortunate time in this holoforms because even though he can be really fun, we just have got young Leo right now as a unit who can give you the gravity status debuff, and he can actually get the extraction as well and debuffs the enemy for the sabotage status as well, and he has got the damage reduction piercing and also Canto built in his weapon. So the compression of young Leo is a lot better, and the same kind of playstyle is also there with the Adzi, who can act as a near savior. I mean, she's not the bulkiest, but still you get the point. So here we have got Valentine Leo, who's certainly a bit better than a lot of the other Leo alts that we have got who do not have a preferred weapon. So at least this weapon has got slaying built in it, and it's sort of both player phase and enemy phase on the foes in the cardinal direction. If he does win the resistance check, then he's going to be debuffing them for -7 defense and resistance, which does pair up well with any kind of ally who may have any kind of hexblade effect. And then he also debuffs them with the gravity status, which can help you lock them down. We have got quite a bit of warping now, but there's also the warp blocking that you can deploy alongside him. And if you have an ice lock healer, then that's another way of limiting their movement and mobility. And mobility is pretty important in FEH. So here he's also going to be getting a lot of effects in the combat, depending on if he initiates combat or if he's within 2 spaces of an ally. So he's able to get Omni +5, and depending on the difference between his resistance stat against the foe, if it's 1 or more, then he gets the guaranteed follow-up attack. He gets true damage based on 20% of his resistance if it's 4 or more, which isn't really all that bad. And then if it's 7 or more, and if he's initiating combat, then he gets the half null follow-up, the offensive half, which allows him to bypass any kind of follow-up denial. And then he also gets the pierceable 30% damage reduction on the first attack. So the payout is definitely not there for this kind of resistance check. It's quite conditional, and the best effect out of this is certainly the true damage in my opinion, because that can help you nuke a bit better with the tools that we've got, with stuff like lingering and the brave attacks that he can get out of triangle attack or dual strike status. So for his premium build, you can try and go with curve shot because it is going to be giving you the unpierceable damage reduction, and because he has got a slaying weapon, it's not going to be that hard for him to pre-charge that special or get the help of a pre-impulse status or that effect in the combat from an ally. And Deadeye can also work, but usually nowadays we do prefer curve shot on a lot of the archers because it does help them survive with its unpierceable damage reduction, and you can try and outsource the damage reduction piercing with many of the allies that you can try and run. So I do prefer curve shot a bit more. And then for his slot 8, just like Camilla, I do think that crystalline water is really helpful because he has the rest check, and it also works in both phases, and stacking up the visible resistance on him with the rest check of his weapon with the gravity status is going to be paying dividends, along with the ploy skill, and the cleansing of the debuffs and the panic is also helpful. Detect is going to be the debuff in middle of the turn, so against any kind of Freyr team, it is going to be helpful to provide that support to your allies, and it also gives the lull speed defense to any kind of ally that is facing an enemy with the exposure status. So you may think it overlaps a bit with the ploy effect, but actually the ploy skill, which can debuff the enemies with the exposure status, is not bad because it means that without taking any kind of assist action, you're able to get the lull speed defense thanks to detect being there, and you're also able to give that support to your allies. And if you want to have the Fortress effect natively for the Canto, then you could run it with the Fortress skill, which does give you the true damage. Assassin Strike is a player phase true damage tool, which is going to be something if you do not get the other skills. And Attack Defense Snag is also middle of the turn debuff option, which does debuff the enemy with the sabotage status. So that's also an option to support your allies, but I feel like the Detect skill is quite superior when it comes to that kind of middle of the turn support. And finally, in slot C, I think that attack speed ploy is perfect because it can enable him to debuff all stats of the foes that are in the cardinal direction, and it also lets him get the exposure and the ploy status on the enemies, but it is something that is going to be getting cleansed. So if you want to have some other options and if you already have deploy skill on him, then Shadow Shift is a pretty good option, and you could also try and get attack speed inside Hone, and as always Fatal Smoke is going to be helpful in this kind of metagame where we have got a lot of miracle effects. The final unit out of this batch is going to be Valentine Takumi, who is a ranged armor, so it is going to be a bit of a tough battle against a lot of the insane nukes because he does not have enough raw bulk. So he does have his weapon Dawn Sweet Box, which does have slaying built in it, and in the combat it can give him Omni +5, but he can also get up to -10 attack and speed debuff on the enemies, depending on the allies that have more attack than him. So it's a bit of a reference to his competitive personal skill in Fates, and that's not going to be all that hard with the units that we have got nowadays with their high base attack. And then he's going to be comparing his speed with the opponent, similar to how Leo compares his resistance. So this is going to be an in-combat speed check, so you do not need to stack up the visible resistance, and this is going to be an in-combat check. So if it's -4 or more, then you're going to be getting 30% pierceable damage reduction on the first attack. If it's 0 or more, then you get 7 HP heal on these special triggers. And then the best effect, which is going to be the Scowl effect, is going to be given to you if it's 4 or above. And that's also only there if you have the weapon strangle advantage. So there are not too many insane red nukes out there that are going to be ranged that he's going to be able to save against, but he is able to counter the young version of Leo for what it's worth, and that is probably one of the more useful red units that we have got right now out of all of the new ones that we have got. And a lot of the ranged nukes are unfortunately not going to be of red color, so he's not going to be getting an easy weapon strangle advantage against them. So he's mainly going to be a counter pick unit that you strategically bring against a certain team that does not have a lot of ranged threats, or the ranged threats which he's going to be having the weapon strangle advantage against. And as a fast armor, it's in his best interest to stack up the speed, especially when he compares his speed with the opponent for a lot of the effects in his weapon. And for the weapon, you could also try and grab Devoted Cup Plus. It's a pretty fun option because of its ridiculous true damage. So you could try and use him as a player phase armor with the Lin Ring and Bright Katria. So that's also an option, and he's going to be able to quad attack. So if you're a big Takumi fan, then that's going to be a worthy weapon to be picked up. That's not Arcane Medusa. And then you can try and get the Armored Scales, and Armored Flow is going to be a skill that you can use for the unpierceable damage reduction, as he does have a bit more resistance. And we do have the other skills like Deluge Boost, which can give him more speed and HP and also resistance at the same time to scale off Armored Flow and its damage. Unfortunately, Primordial Boost, which would be the best skill for him in his slot, is not available in the skill pool because it's too recent of a skill. So you would have to make do with the older boost skills. And Firestorm Boost and Earth Wind Boost are also the options if you do not get Deluge Boost. And then for the slot B, I think that Clever Fighter is his best slot B option because just like Savvy Fighter 3 that he comes with, it does let him have the null follow-up effect, but it also gives him the very valuable 10 flat damage reduction, and it also has the Rift effect. So as a fast armor, those are going to be useful effects, especially the 10 flat damage reduction that is just given to you without any kind of scaling, and it's mainly going to be checking for the speed, so you're already going to be stacking that up. And there isn't really any other slot B option that I would recommend honestly on him, because the fast range armors have limited options to begin with. And then for the slot C, there isn't really an attack speed variant of the Briar Far Safe skill, but I do think that a Briar Far Safe skill, even if it focuses on the attack and defense, is going to be helpful on a fast armor like that, because he does get the 5 flat damage reduction on the first attack of the enemy, and then he can reflect back the damage, so it can help him with the damage output a bit. But usually if he's getting hit that much, then he's likely not going to be surviving. He's mainly going to be there to survive the first attack, and that's why a Briar Far Safe skill is something I would recommend. In May, we're going to be having the 3 houses holoforms, and there are many potential units that can be available. And there's also a last minute calendar change that can be done to include some of the legendary and mythic units from this game, and we do have a couple of reruns of Three Houses units already scheduled for the month of May, so you could try and have an educated guess that they're going to be on this kind of Hall of Forms. And I think that Three Houses Hall of Forms is going to be the first one to have 4 legendary units. So it was the first one to have 4 Choose Your Legends units, and now it's going to be the first one for this kind of thing. And it's likely going to be having both of the pilots because they are scheduled to rerun in the month of May along with Edelgard and Claude, which is going to be unfortunately leaving out Dimitri, as we can only have 4 units. And if they do change their plans and put those units on the remix banner, then they could try and do the last minute calendar change if they do it at the end of the month. And then they could include Legendary Dimitri and then have Summer Female Shez or even Legendary Yuri as the red option. And that's going to be making for the 4th Lord if it's not going to be any of the pilots. All of these units, except for maybe Claude, do take quite a bit of investment, so I certainly would not mind any of them, but the roster that we have and the potential options are quite big, but still I think they may focus on the most popular legendary versions of these characters. And I want to thank all of my YouTube members for the constant support. You can click the link on the screen right now to check out my breakdown of Attuned Hector, our free Hero Rises winner. You can also subscribe and hit the notification bell because YouTube sub boxes give me as much pain as missing the Resound skill in this Hall of Forms. So with that said, let's see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.